Hey guys, my name's Rob, and we're going to be doing a series on how to get started in film photography. In this first episode, we're going to talk about how to do it without actually using a film camera. So analog photography and 35mm photography is becoming more and more popular these days, and a lot of people want to get into that hobby. I bought my first camera from a thrift shop for about $35. And it wasn't until a couple years later that I got my first digital camera. So I shot most of all of my work from when I started photography on a film camera. So we're going to start by assuming that you don't have a film camera yet, but you do have a DSLR or a point and shoot, or maybe a mirrorless camera that you are shooting on currently. The first step that we're going to do is going to be start looking for a camera. Now you can go online and buy a camera, but you're going to be paying a premium for these cameras. Anywhere from $200 to $500 depending on what body you pick. Especially one that has been tested and is known to be working. Now you can gamble with some eBay buys and buy a camera that may or may not be working, maybe it has not been tested, but it is still a risk. If that's not the option that you want to go in, then what I recommend is start looking at thrift shops, start looking at Salvation Army, find estate sales, basically find any place that might have a camera, ask friends and family, and see if anyone would like to donate one to you. Maybe you can inherit one from your grandparents. There's a lot of ways to get film cameras these days. While you're looking, there is 3 cameras that I recommend that are great beginner cameras. The first of that being the Canon AE ones. Those cameras are great starter cameras because they are very simple. They don't have a lot of bells and whistles, but they get the job done. And if you can find an AE1 program, you can actually shoot in aperture priority, meaning that you can change what the aperture is and don't have to worry about the shutter. And on the Nikon side, the FM1 body is going to be your more popular one. These are the ones that I find a lot in college bookstores that are teaching photography, and they go anywhere from $175 to $250 with the lens. The last one that I recommend is the Pentax K1000. This is a full manual camera, so there's no program modes, no automatic settings, but you have full control over the shutter, you have full control over the aperture, and it is a great body. These are probably one of my favorite cameras. This is one of the ones that I've had for years, and this is the one I still shoot on. So while we're looking for that camera, we can still build skills that we're going to use when we're using that film camera and when we're finally ready to load that first roll of film. We're going to talk about how to set up your digital camera to practice these skills. The first thing that I want to talk about is the light metering. In most cameras I recommended, they're using a center-weighted light meter. This means it's taking an average over the entire scene. So you want to make sure that you're setting the metering of your digital camera, when possible, to center-weighted metering. So the next thing that you're going to want to do is pick an ISO and lock it to it. I would avoid going below 400 or higher than 800 just because most film stocks that you're going to find are going to be in those ranges. The last thing we want to do to set up our DSLR camera for this is to make sure that we do not have live review or we do not have the screen visible. Basically shooting blind. You're not going to be able to review it, you're not going to be able to change it, you're not going to be able to look at these photos until you get home. So on this camera body, I have taken a piece of gaff tape and just covered it over the screen. If you have a flip screen, you can just flip it closed. You can turn off the live review if you need to see your settings on the back. If you are shooting mirrorless, a lot of the mirrorless cameras have an EVF that's going to give you exposure compensation in the viewfinder. There is a way to turn that off on some cameras. If you can, I highly recommend doing it. Now we're going to work on the exercise of shooting as if we had a film camera. So this is a great exercise if you want to get into film photography, and it's basically going to be limiting yourself on how you shoot. With digital photography, we can kind of spray and pray or adjust on the fly because we have instant review. We can see exactly what we're taking a picture of and adjust from there. With film, you're not going to be able to do that until it gets developed. So you're going to have to trust that your settings are perfect and that you're exposing the image properly using that exposure triangle that we all learned. Now, I recommend going out and shooting and limiting yourself to 24 or 36 images. You can shoot less, you can shoot a little bit more, but try to keep it under 36. That's what a typical roll of film is going to hold. The other thing that you should be doing is you need to bring a field journal. And the reason that we're doing this is because it's going to be kind of hard to just on the fly know how many photos you've taken. And with film photography, we need to think a little bit more about the pictures that we're taking. Every exposure counts. That means the composition has to be thought about before we do it. We have to be sure about our metering, and we have to be 100% sure that this is going to be the photo that we want to take. Otherwise, you get a roll of film that maybe you get one photo from, and that's just not fun. So what we're going to do is we're going to take out a field journal, and we're going to write down the settings that we've used for that shot, any notes about the composition, how we wanted to compose it, maybe other ways that you might want to compose it. This practice of writing is going to slow us down, get our minds thinking about how we're going to be taking photos when we're on film, and planning out shots on the fly when you're doing something like street photography or just adventuring. And it's also going to let us see what mistakes we made. When you get home and you look at these photos and you see that, oh, this one's overexposed. Well, what settings was I using? What was the scene? Was there hard backlight? Was there too much shadows? These are the things you want to write down so that you know, okay, so when I have a lot of backlight on the center weighted metering, it told me I was metering correctly, but it was way too blown out. So I need to underexpose to make sure I get that detail in. So just to summarize what we've talked about in this video, we've gone through how to find a camera if you don't want to spend a lot of money buying one online, and which bodies to look out for. We talked about how to set up our DSLR to be able to shoot like we're shooting on film, so we can practice that process. And we also went over an exercise that we can use to get ourselves comfortable shooting film. So if you guys like this video, make sure you leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more, and also leave a comment down below for me real quick of your favorite or a dream film camera that you want to get. Alright guys, hopefully this has been helpful, and we will talk next time about how to load film in your camera.